First up, I'm going to make Gilbert some eyes. To do this, I'm going to use cake pops. For the purpose of the demonstration, I've got polystyrene dummies. I would recommend, especially if you're doing this for children, that you use real cake pops. You can watch a video on that. Or you can make them out of icing like I have done here. You would just follow exactly the same technique once you've rolled your icing and let it set. So in this pot here, I have some candy melts in blue. I'm just going to dip the end of my cake pop stick into the candy melts, and I'm going to insert that into the centre. It's a lot easier with real cake, like so. And then I'm going to dip this into my candy melts. If you're doing it with real cake, it's worth leaving those to set up for a while, so the candy melt really firms onto the end of your cake pop. We're just going to dip that like so. I'm going to give it a little shake, make sure it's all covered, and I'm just going to tap and wiggle to shake off any of that excess covering. Does take a bit of time, this. Need to kind of keep moving it a bit until it starts to set up. Okay, and once you're happy with that, just pop it into a polystyrene dummy to dry. I'm going to use these two here that I made earlier. They're nice and dry. And we're going to finish off Gilbert's eyes. Let's move that over. To do that, I'm going to roll some little balls of orange and black. Move those over. I've got some little circle cutters here to do this with. A little rolling pin. You don't need very much for this at all. Okay, I'm going to use my larger round cutter to do two of those. And I'm going to use a smaller round cutter to cut two little round black ones out. Two. And I'm going to attach those to these cake pops with a little bit of edible glue. Orange one goes on first. And I'm going to position the black one sort of down the bottom of that circle, so it's not in the centre. Like that. Same again with this one. I've got some little tiny white pearl dragees here, tiny ones, and I'm just going to pop one of those on each of his eyes just to sort of make them pop. So to do that, I'm going to use a bit of glue, and that's going to go in the centre down there, and then I'm going to pick it up using the end of my slightly glued brush, just like so. I'm going to pop that back in my cake dummy. Okay, and then they can be left to dry. The next thing I'm going to do is make some feet. These are really simple and easy. You want to take two sort of evenly sized pieces of orange sugar paste and roll them into balls. Okay, and I'm going to make those ever so slightly sort of sausage shaped. And I'm going to just curve them a little bit. You can make your feet as big or as small as you like. Then using the end of my paintbrush, I'm just going to mark out where his toes will be. So I'm going to do 3 marks along here to make 4 toes. 1, 2, 3. And if you just press slightly on the back as you do that, it's a nice sort of wedge-shaped foot. Same again. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and they're ready to go on the cake shortly. The other thing I'm going to do is make him a little nose. We use the same shape as we did for the feet, but this time it's a much smaller piece. So roll a ball into a little bit of a sausage, press it down slightly at the back, and then use the end of your paintbrush just to make 2 nostrils. 1, 2. Easy as that. Next we can move on to piping his fur. Okay, so I've had a bit of a clear up and I've brought my cake in. This is a 5-inch round tall cake, which I've just covered in a thin layer of buttercream. I've covered the cake in the same colour buttercream that I'm going to pipe the fur in, just so that if there's any gaps in the fur, it's not obvious that there's cake underneath. It just makes it blend a bit better. The first thing I'm going to do is attach his feet. Now, because this is quite soft buttercream, I don't need any glue for this part. Just going to spin him round. It's worth noting that I've set the cake back slightly on the board so because the feet will stick out quite a bit. So I'm just going to find the middle and pop his feet on. You can just wiggle those in so they sit nicely on the edge of the cake. Okay. I'm going to cover the entire cake now in like a fur buttercream. I've got a grass piping nozzle here, which is brilliant for this. I've just filled a piping bag with buttercream, and you just squeeze and pull away. Really easy, and we're going to do that all over him, working from the bottom to the top and round his feet. So I'm going to go all the way around, and then I'll move up a ring and do the same again. Okay, as you can see, I'm now working from the back of Gilbert's head to the front of Gilbert's head. Just means the fur sits a little better on top. Almost there. Okay, looks pretty good to me. The great thing about buttercream is because it stays quite soft for a while. If you find any little patches that you've missed, you can kind of go back in and fill them in. Okay, but I'm happy with that. So I'm now going to bring his eyes in, and I'm going to position those in his head. I find it easy to do them both at the same time because you can get them kind of lined up quite well then. Just going to look at that. The other end. Just poke those down into your cake until you're happy with them. Whichever height. Okay. And there's his eyes. The final thing we're going to do is just pop his nose on. Now this buttercream is again quite soft, so I can just stick that on the top and it will dry and it will attach nicely. So I'm going to poke that in the middle. Okay. And there you have it. One monster.